Time now for business here on France 24. Matthew Warren is the man in the hot seat. Good morning to you, Matthew. We're starting off with Spain saying it doesn't need an IMF bailout despite all their economic problems.
Yes, that's right, Chris. As you say, Spain's been under a lot of pressure. It's got to find a way to recapitalise Bankia. It's also seen its borrowing costs rising. But the Spanish Prime Minister, Mariano Rajoy, has consistently been saying they don't need a bailout. Well, today it's been the turn of his deputy. She's in Washington, where she's been meeting the US Treasury Secretary and the head of the IMF. Alexander Turnbull has more.
It was just a coincidence. Spanish Deputy Prime Minister Sáenz de Santa Maria said her visit to Washington did not mean her country was seeking financial help from the IMF.
It's a coincidence. I'd scheduled this trip to Washington months ago, although it turned out to be an opportunity to let decision makers here know about the huge efforts the Spanish people are making, not only to come out of this crisis, but to come out stronger.
Head of the IMF, Christine Lagarde, confirmed she had not received a request from Spain for a bailout of any sort. The country is facing growing borrowing costs, with 10-year bonds reaching 6.7% interest rates. Greece, Ireland and Portugal had asked for international financial aid after crossing the 7% threshold. Investors are also starting to wonder where Spain intends to find the money to help its banks, including Bankia, which says it needs some 19 billion euros to continue running. In an attempt to ease market pressure, the European Commission gave Spain an extra year to cut its deficit to 3%. And on Thursday, Brussels suggested the future European Stability Mechanism be used to help out indebted banks.
We're analyzing the possibility right now. U.S. Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner has said we're working in the same direction to find a solution for the banks. This problem is not about Spain as a country, but that at any given moment, our financial system has needs. And other banks in other European countries have similar needs at this time.
The European Commission also made it clear banks could be forced to create a new special fund to help European authorities and governments bail out establishments facing financial difficulties.
That's Spain, Matthew. Next up, China, an important day for the Chinese currency.
Yes, a bit more openness in China, because for the first time the Chinese yuan is going to trade directly with the Japanese yen. Until now, the dollar has always been used as an intermediary currency. It's the first time they're picking another major currency as well. And our Beijing correspondent Shannon von Sant told us earlier why this is significant.
It's fairly significant. For one thing, it forges greater business ties between China and Japan amidst territorial disputes, amidst other tensions in the region. It's also significant because China is trying to foster the use of the yuan internationally in parallel with China's economic rise. And it's also significant because China's currency has faced a lot of criticism, especially in the last 3 years, because people criticize it for contributing to the trade deficit that China has with Western countries like the United States.
Shannon von Sant there in Beijing. Well, some other Chinese news that we've got today is on manufacturing sector. The PMI survey results are in, and in May that figure was at 50.4. Now anything above 50 shows the economy is continuing to grow, but that's much lower than had been hoped for. About 52.2 had been expected, so that's a bit disappointing there for China.
Next up.
Yeah, now next up, let's talk about the markets. And now markets in May, there's this old expression, sell in May and go away. Well, investors certainly did that. We can take a look at what happened in the May markets now that they've all closed up. And in Europe, it was a pretty sorry affair. Markets were down across the board. And in some, it was sort of records they don't want to be making. Worst month on the FTSE there for 3 years. And it was a similar story in the US. The Dow Jones saw its worst month for 2 years. All the markets down there as well. Well, markets in Wall Street today will be keeping their eye out for the monthly jobs report. They're very keen to see that. And yesterday we got a sort of advanced taste of how that might be with some figures on private sector employment job creation. Now, those figures came in at 133,000 new jobs, and that wasn't really the sort of number that the market was looking for. We also had the weekly claims figures for unemployment figures as well. Those were in. They were slightly disappointing as well. So the big report today will be the one that everybody's looking out for. That will be the monthly unemployment figures for May, just to see how strong this American recovery is or whether it's faltering. We can take a look at the markets as well and how they all closed yesterday in New York, and they were all in negative territory by the end of trading. Over in Asia, we've seen a bit of a mixed picture today on trading there. We've seen some markets slipping into the red, the Nikkei notably, but others managed to make a few gains as well, the Shanghai Composite and the Hang Seng there. Well, let's pick up on some of the day's company news. Air France KLM shareholders were in defiant mood on Thursday. Almost 80% voted against a €400,000 bonus for the company's former CEO Pierre-Henri Goujon. The vote has no power, but the French finance minister has called on Goujon to return the money for moral reasons.
Elsewhere, the group that runs Formula One races is delaying its planned flotation. The group had planned to launch a $2.5 billion IPO on the Singapore Stock Exchange this month. The listing has been pulled due to choppy market conditions. It's the latest in a series of flotations to be pulled in the last week as companies take fright at falling stock markets. And
Facebook investors who expected a first-day pop in the shares were naive. That's the view of the boss of Morgan Stanley, James Gorman. He said in a television interview that anyone expecting immediate gains bought under the wrong pretenses. Facebook shares have fallen 20% since the flotation, although they managed a late-stage rally of 5% on Thursday.
Now, did the head of the International Monetary Fund go too far? Last week, Christine Lagarde caused offence by criticising Greece's tax evaders. She's apologised, but it's done little to calm the anger.
Her tough comments on Greece have backfired. IMF chief Christine Lagarde found herself in hot water after comments she made during a newspaper interview enraged the Greek public. Now her aide says she's sorry.
She said that she regrets that her remarks were misunderstood and caused offence. The managing director and the fund have always said that we have great respect for Greece.
Lagarde told Britain's Guardian newspaper last week that Greece must solve its chronic problem of tax evasion, not just relying on other countries to save its economy. She also suggested the Greek people were not suffering as much as children in impoverished African nations. Greek officials lambasted her remarks, attacking her for her own privileged financial situation. As head of an international organisation, her $500,000 annual salary is subject to zero income tax. Lagarde has posted a comment on her Facebook page insisting she will continue to support and sympathise with the Greek people. That wasn't enough to calm down public anger. Around 37,000 comments have been thrown at her in that post in all different languages.
Finally, Matthew, Ireland in the headlines for this vote on the fiscal compact, but it seems some residents are more concerned about getting their old currency back.
Yeah, this was an ingenious idea from a shop owner in Ireland who decided they could start using the punt, which is still legal tender there, actually. Let's take a listen to why he thought this was a good scheme.
People aren't happy with the austerity, they're happy with cutbacks, just total disenchantment. Disbelief with the whole system, with what has happened over the past 3 or 4 years. This is a positive, absolutely a positive step towards some growth in this local economy.
The way it works is you take your punts into shops like that and you get a voucher back in euros that you can spend, because apparently there are about 300 million Irish pounds still around. As I said, they are still legal tender at the banks, so it's a way for those shop owners to flush out more cash from Irish people.
It's an ingenious scheme. Matthew Warren, thanks very much for that roundup of the business. Do stay with us here on Live from Paris. Lorna will be back with more news very soon.